This video explains using Excel for synthetic division of polynomials. When we're doing synthetic division, oftentimes it's hard to keep track of where everything is. So one way we can do that is in Excel. So what I have in cell 1A is the original division problem. So what we have is 5x cubed minus 13x squared plus 10x minus 8, all divided by x minus 2. So the first thing we need to do is take each piece down. So let's look at each term in the polynomial. So the first one is 5x raised to the third power. So I then put that in cell B2, just the 5x raised to the third power. And then next to that, to the right in the same row, in cell C2, I put our second term, which is negative 13x squared. And in cell D2, I put our third term, which is plus 10x. And in cell E2, to the right of that, I put in negative 8. So we have all four terms that we'll be dividing in an individual cell. So below that, we're going to pull down our coefficients. The first thing we need to look at is our R value. So in this equation, or this quotient, we have x minus 2 as our divisor. So we want it to be in the format of x minus r. So for this one, it would be x minus a negative 2. So our R value is a positive 2. So our R equals 8. Or excuse me, R equals 2. So our R value, we then put in the row below where we separated out each term. So that would be in cell A3. So we put our 2 right there. And then to the right, so in row 3, we're going to pull down our coefficients right from the cell above. So our first term was 5x cubed. So in cell B3, we put a 5. In C3, we have a negative 13 as our coefficient, so C3 gets a negative 13. Our next term is 10x, so D3 gets a 10. And our last term is a negative 8, so E3 gets just a negative 8. Okay, so now we have row 3 as a 2, 5, negative 13, 10, and negative 8. And our cell in column A is our R value. So then we do our multiplication. But first let's put in our equal bar so we know what we're doing. So we're going to actually skip down to row 5, and we're just going to use the dash all the way across, just so we can really keep track of what we're doing. So we're looking at cell B3 now. B3 is our 5, our first coefficient, so we need to bring that down. And we bring that down, we want to put it in cell B6. So we want to put that in B6. So we put in a 5 in B6. So that's bringing it down. And we don't want to put it directly underneath because we have to do our multiplication first. So now we need to multiply. So in synthetic division, remember, we multiply our R value to the coefficients we bring down below the equal bar. So we have a 2 in A3. We multiply it to our first coefficient in B6. So we have 2 times 5 is 10. And that bounces back up above our equal bar. And we put it in row C. So it goes into C4, which is right below our second term at negative 13. So 2 times 5 is 10. So now we have negative 13 plus 10. So we can just arrow down to below the equal bar. And now we're in cell C6. We have negative 13 plus 10 gives us a negative 3. Okay, so now we go back up to cell A3, which is our 2, our R value, and multiply it to our negative 3 we just put into cell C6. So 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. So that goes below our third term, which is in D4, a value of 10. So we have 10, and below that we put in a negative 6. So we have 10 minus 6, arrow down to cell D6, and we put in 4. Okay, so then we go back to our value in A3, which is, we know is a 2, multiply it to the value in D6 that we just came up with. 2 times 4 is 8. And then we go back up to cell E4, over 1 up 3, 2 times 4 is 8. And we add those two together. So our term was negative 8. We add 8 to it, which gives us 0, a remainder of 0. Okay, so now we have our coefficients. We have 5, negative 3, 4, and 0. So below that, we can put all of our variables and exponents back on. So our first coefficient is 5, and we know that when we are writing out our quotient, we go 1 degree lower than our original. So we have 5x cubed. So this time we have 5x raised to the second power. That's our first time. And now let's our next one. Our next one is a negative 3. So we have 5x squared, and we will minus 3x. Then our next cell over in D6 is a positive 4, so plus 4. And we have a 0 in our last column, which is a remainder 0. So our answer is 5x squared minus 3x plus 4.